One night I came home from work and found my mill rearranging my kitchen. When I asked why, she said, "This house was never yours, it's my son's." My husband said, "She just misses feeling useful." I stayed silent. Until the day she invited friends over and introduced me as the girl who lives here. So I threw a housewarming party and made a toast that ended with the deed in my name projected on the wall. She left without taking a bite. I'll never forget the sound my front door made that night. Just this soft click as I walked in after a 12-hour shift at the hospital in Raleigh. I was so tired my eyes were burning, and all I wanted was leftover pasta and silence. Instead, I walked straight into my mother-in-law's back, bent over my open kitchen cabinets like she owned the place. At first, I honestly thought I was hallucinating. She had pots stacked on the floor, my spices dumped into a mixing bowl, all the Tupperware lids thrown across the counter like she'd been digging for buried treasure. I just stood there, holding my bag, feeling that weird mix of shock and anger slow boil in my chest. What are you doing?" I finally asked. She didn't even turn around. She just kept moving things, humming like she was in her own world. When she finally faced me, she had that polite, stiff smile she always used when she was about to say something awful. "This house was never yours," she said, like it was the most natural thing ever. "It's my son's, I'm putting things where they belong." I swear I felt something in me drop, like a floorboard giving out. "This is my kitchen," I said. "We bought this house together." She laughed, actually laughed, and waved her hand. "Sweetheart, please, you live here, that's different." And before I could even respond, my husband walked in behind me, smelling like the takeout he'd clearly picked up for himself. He glanced around at the chaos and said, "Mom, maybe don't do this right now." But then he looked at me and shrugged. "She just misses feeling useful," he said, like that explained everything. Like I was supposed to just accept it. I didn't trust my voice, so I said nothing. Not that anyone was listening to me anyway. I learned to stay silent after that. It was easier. Or at least it felt easier than fighting two people who seemed glued together by some weird mother-son loyalty I'd never understand. But then came the night, 3 weeks later, when she invited friends over to see the house. I walked downstairs and heard her say, loud enough for the whole living room to hear, "And this is the girl who lives here." Not my son's wife. Not the homeowner, not even my damn name. Just the girl who lives here like I was a tenant, like I was temporary. Something in me went cold. Not angry, not sad, just done. I don't know what expression I had on my face, but she looked at me like she knew she had pushed something too far. Still, she didn't take it back. So instead of confronting her right there, I smiled. A real smile this time. One she clearly didn't understand. Because in that moment, right then, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to take back my house, my voice, my dignity, and I was going to do it in a way she would never forget. I just needed one thing first, one document she didn't know existed. And once I had it, I planned a housewarming party of my own, one she wouldn't be able to laugh her way out of. Because when the truth finally came out that night, it hit her so hard she walked out without touching a single bite of food. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The real story starts the day the deed arrived in the mail addressed only to me, and I realized my husband had been hiding something far bigger than his mother's disrespect. Before all of this blew up, before the deed, before the toast that made my mother-in-law walk out like she'd been slapped, life in our little ranch house in Raleigh felt manageable. Not perfect, not amazing, but steady. I met my husband, Tyler, 5 years ago at a friend's cookout. He was quieter back then, softer somehow. He had this calm way about him that made me feel grounded. We started dating fast, moved in together even faster, and within a year we were talking marriage and houses and plans like we were building something real. When we bought the house, it felt like our turning point. We scraped everything together, my savings, his savings, all the boring financial stuff couples do when they're trying to be adults. I remember signing the papers at the closing office, my hand shaking because I never thought I'd own anything in my life that mattered this much. I didn't notice his mother's face that day. Maybe I should have. She had this tight-lipped look, like she was forcing herself to smile but choking on it at the same time. She hugged Tyler first, then gave me one of those stiff side hugs that feels more like a pat on the back. I told myself she just needed time. Everyone kept saying she was traditional, which felt like a polite way of saying she believed her son was some kind of golden child, and every woman he dated was just visiting. Maybe I thought marriage would fix that. Maybe I thought she'd see I wasn't going anywhere. But moving into the new house seemed to make things worse. She'd show up unannounced with bags of groceries we didn't ask for, or she'd criticize how I arranged furniture, or she'd give suggestions about how a wife should keep a home. Half the time she said it like she was helping. The other half she didn't bother pretending. I tried to set boundaries. Soft ones, gentle ones. I didn't want to create drama. Every time I brought it up to Tyler, he'd do this helpless shrug like he was a passenger in his own life. "That's just how she is," he'd say. "She doesn't mean anything by it. She's trying. She'll back off eventually." But she never did. Instead, she found new ways to push, new ways to test how much space she could take in our house. The kitchen was always her target. I grew up with a mom who taught me that the kitchen is where people show love. So when my mother-in-law touched it, messed with it, criticized it, it felt personal in a way that was hard to explain. The night I walked in on her rearranging everything wasn't the first time she'd crossed a line. It was just the first time she said the quiet part out loud. The part where she didn't see me as a wife, a partner, or a homeowner, just an intruder. But the real shift didn't happen because of her. It happened the day the envelope came in the mail. I remember checking the box on my way back from work, still in scrubs, exhausted. The envelope was thick and from the county office. I thought it was something boring, tax stuff, maybe a notice. But when I opened it and saw the deed printed with only my name, no joint ownership, no co-signing, no shared title, my heart just stopped. Not because I wanted the house to be mine alone, but because Tyler had told me we were buying it together. And yet he had never said a word about putting it only in my name. Not once. My stomach twisted. Either there was a mistake, or there was something he had chosen not to tell me. And suddenly, his mother's behavior, her confidence, her entitlement, the way she talked about the house like it belonged to her son, felt like a puzzle I didn't have all the pieces to yet. But I was about to find them. Because this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was the beginning of something I didn't see coming. I spent the rest of that night sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the deed like it was written in some language I didn't understand. My name. Only mine, clean as day, no mention of Tyler anywhere. It didn't make sense. When we bought the house, we both signed so many papers I could barely keep track. I remembered him sitting next to me, handing me pens, checking boxes, flipping pages. How could he not be on the deed? How was that even possible? I waited until he got home from work the next day. He dropped his keys into the bowl by the door like nothing was wrong, like we were just another married couple living a normal life. I watched him open the fridge and grab a beer. "Hey," I said, holding the deed in my hands, "can we talk?" He glanced at it, then at me, and his face went pale in this way that didn't sit right. "Oh, you got that," he said, "that." As if it was a package I ordered. I asked him why his name wasn't on it. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes, and muttered something about credit issues and timing problems, and we were in a rush at closing. None of it sounded real. "So why didn't you tell me?" I asked. He sighed, frustrated, like I was the one being difficult. "Because it didn't matter. We live here together. It's our house." But that wasn't the part that scared me. The part that scared me was how calm he was about hiding something so big. I didn't push it then. I was still trying to understand the pieces. But after that conversation, I started paying closer attention. To him, to his mother, to the way they talked around things like they had some shared script I wasn't given. And the more I watched, the more the cracks showed. His mother kept coming over more than before, sometimes twice a day, sometimes early in the morning before I even left for work. She'd walk around the house like she was inspecting it, touching walls, opening closets, asking weird questions about upgrades and resale value. One afternoon, I came home early because the hospital called off my shift. She was standing in the hallway with a tape measure. A tape measure. I asked what she was doing. She said she was helping Tyler figure out future renovations. Except Tyler had never mentioned any renovations. It started to feel like I was the last person in my own life to know what was happening. Then came the night she introduced me to her friends as the girl who lives here, and something snapped clean in me. The humiliation, it wasn't even the sharp kind. It was heavy, slow, thick. It settled in my chest like wet cement. I didn't say anything. I just watched her, watched Tyler laugh nervously, watched everyone look at me like I was some accessory they didn't order but came free with the house. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone on the couch, thinking about the deed tucked in the drawer of my nightstand. My name, my home, and yet I felt like I was disappearing inside it. The next morning, I woke up with a calm I didn't recognize. A steady, cold feeling. Not anger, clarity. If they wanted to treat me like I didn't exist, then fine. I'd stop trying to be included in whatever fantasy they were living in. But I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I wasn't going to stay in the dark. And I definitely wasn't going to let them rewrite the story of who this house belonged to. So I started digging. And what I found made everything make sense, and made the revenge I eventually planned feel almost too small. Because there was a reason his name wasn't on the deed. A reason she acted like the house was hers. A reason they moved the way they did, secretive and smug. A reason that would blow the entire situation open. I just didn't know it yet. I didn't expect to find anything big. Honestly, I thought I'd uncover some boring financial paperwork or maybe realize I'd misunderstood something. But once I started digging, things stopped adding up fast. It started with the loan documents. I requested copies from the mortgage company, mostly because the deed mess had me feeling paranoid. When the packet arrived, I sat on the living room floor and flipped through page after page until I found the signature lines. My signature. The lender's signature. The closing attorney's signature. And one empty line where Tyler's should have been. Not just empty, never intended to be signed. His name wasn't even printed under a signature line. There was no space for him at all. This had been set up from day one to be my mortgage, not ours. I stared at it for what felt like forever, trying to remember the closing day. He had been there. He had held my hand. He had passed me the pen. I had assumed we were signing the same things, but he never once signed anything. Not one sheet. That alone felt like betrayal, but it still didn't explain why. Why wouldn't he want his name on the house? Why hide it? The next clue came from the county website. I searched the property history and found a line item linked to our address that made my stomach twist. A lien filed 2 years before we bought the place. A lien under his mother's name. It had been cleared, just a few months before we purchased our house, but seeing her name connected to the property history was like being hit with cold water. I didn't understand the details yet, but it meant she had some past financial mess involving a property in the same area. Something that could mess with a mortgage. So I kept digging. And late that night, I found what blew the entire situation open. An old listing online, our exact house. Same square footage, same layout, same backyard fence line. But the seller's disclosure named the previous owner as a company I recognized. A small LLC run by one person. Tyler's mother. She had owned this house. She had owned it, lost it because of the lien, and then quietly stepped back when the bank took it. And then we bought it. I bought it. Without them ever telling me this used to be her property. My heart pounded as the pieces connected in this awful, undeniable way. They didn't just see this house as hers. They genuinely believed it was supposed to stay in the family. And because her name had been ruined by the lien, she couldn't buy it back. And because Tyler had terrible credit, he couldn't either. But my credit, my clean record, my steady job, I was their loophole. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped my laptop. This wasn't some innocent misunderstanding or cultural difference, or she just misses feeling useful. They had used me, not emotionally, not accidentally, not gradually. They used me to buy back her house, her old house, and they never planned to tell me. I sat there until the sun started to rise, feeling like the entire foundation of my life had just cracked open. I wasn't a wife in their eyes. I was a vehicle, a second chance, a means to an end. And the sickest part, they probably assumed I'd never find out, but now I knew everything. And if they thought I was going to just swallow that betrayal quietly, they had no idea who they were dealing with. The morning after everything clicked into place, I sat at the kitchen table with the deed in one hand and a cup of burnt hospital breakroom coffee in the other. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. My entire body felt wired, like I'd been pushed past fear and anger into some cold, steady determination I didn't know I had in me. They used me to buy her house back. They lied to me for an entire year. And then she had the nerve to call me the girl who lives here. No, absolutely not. That was the moment the revenge stopped being an impulse and became a plan. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't even going to confront them, not yet. I wanted a moment they would never forget. A moment so sharp it would scar them with the truth. This house belonged to me, not her, not them, not their family legacy. So I started planning. First thing I did was call a lawyer recommended by one of the physicians at work. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. I asked him to explain why my husband wasn't on the deed. He took one look at the documents and told me flat out, "This is legally your house, sole ownership, he has no claim." I asked him if there was any scenario, even a technicality, that could give them a foothold. He said no. Hearing it out loud steadied something in me that had been shaking for weeks. Next, I went through every document in the house. Insurance, utility accounts, emergency contacts, every last thing was under my name. It felt like I was peeling back layers of a lie Tyler, and his mother thought I'd never question. The more I read, the angrier I got. Not explosive anger, just this quiet, simmering heat that told me I was going to follow through with everything I was planning. Then I did something that almost made me laugh at how petty and brilliant it felt. I bought a small projector. Nothing fancy, just enough to cast an image clearly on the living room wall. I also scanned the deed onto a USB drive and created a perfectly cropped, zoomed-in slide with MY name in bold. After that, all I needed was the right moment. Something symbolic, something she would hate, a housewarming party. But not just any housewarming party, my housewarming party. I planned it for 2 weeks later, on a Saturday evening. I invited my coworkers, a couple of neighbors she'd never met, and a few friends she couldn't stand. I made sure the guest list was big enough that she couldn't pretend it wasn't happening. I printed invitations and left one taped to the fridge where she'd see it the next time she dropped by. I didn't write her name on it, just family of Tyler. I wanted that little sting to sit under her skin. 2 days before the party, she stopped by without knocking as usual. She saw the decorations I'd already bought, the catering menu on the counter, and she frowned at everything like it smelled bad. "What is all this?" she asked. "A housewarming," I said calmly. "But you've lived here almost a year." "Exactly." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the same calculation I'd seen the day she called me the girl who lives here. She didn't know yet. She didn't know what was coming, but she felt it. That night, Tyler confronted me about the party. He said his mother felt excluded. He said I was overreacting. He even said I should consider her feelings. That was the moment I realized he was not clueless. He was complicit. I let him talk. I let him justify. I let him dig his own grave with every word about how it's really her house in a way. I didn't argue. Because the next time we had a real conversation, it would be in front of 30 people, and a wall-sized projection of the truth he'd been hiding. The truth she'd built her entire identity on reclaiming. My name, my deed, my house. And neither of them could stop what was coming. The night before the housewarming party, something happened that I still replay in my mind because it changed everything. Not the facts, not the deed, but the stakes. I was in the guest room wrapping utensils in napkins when I heard Tyler's voice downstairs. Low, urgent, not his usual passive, apologetic tone. I almost ignored it until I heard his mother's voice too, sharp and panicked. I moved quietly down the hallway and stood just out of view. The way their voices echoed in the kitchen made it impossible not to hear. "She cannot find out," his mother hissed. "If she knows, we're done, done." "I know," Tyler said. "Mom, I know, just stop freaking out." My stomach clenched. Find out what? I already knew everything that mattered, or so I thought. Then she said the words that froze me in place. "If she divorces you, she walks away with everything. The house, the equity, everything. And the bank will come after me again. I can't go through that twice. I won't survive it." I leaned against the wall because my legs suddenly felt weak. Divorce. I hadn't even said the word out loud yet, not to myself, not to anyone. But the fact that they were already planning for it meant they had seen the end coming long before I had. Tyler sounded terrified. "Not for our marriage, no." His voice shook in a way I recognized from money talks, not emotional ones. "Mom, listen," he said. "I'm trying, but she's not stupid. She's been acting weird since she got the deed. You should have switched it before she saw it. She checks the mailbox. What did you expect me to do, steal it?" That word, switched, hit me like ice water down my spine. Switched what? I covered my mouth with my hand. Then his mother said the last piece of the puzzle, the one that made everything flip. You told me last year you'd get her to put my name on the title once things calmed down. You promised me that. So where is the paperwork, Tyler? Where is it? For a second, I forgot how to breathe. I thought he'd simply hidden the fact that the house was in my name. I thought he was riding the benefit of my clean credit. I thought he was lying by omission. But this was a different level. He wasn't just complicit. He had been planning to manipulate me into signing paperwork to add his mother to the deed. He was waiting for the right moment, waiting for me to trust him enough to sign something without reading it, something couples do all the time, something he had probably hoped I'd see as routine mortgage stuff. They didn't just use me to buy the house. They planned to turn it back into hers. I stepped away before either of them could see me. I went upstairs and shut the guest room door and just stood there, shaking, feeling like the floor had disappeared. The house I paid for. The house I maintained. The house I decorated and cleaned and cared about. They were plotting to put her back on the title. They wanted me to hand it over, not metaphorically, literally, and I had no idea how long they'd been waiting for the right moment to trick me. When I finally lay down that night, staring at the ceiling, the cold clarity from the past few weeks hardened into something sharper, something that felt less like hurt and more like resolve. Tomorrow, my mother-in-law was going to sit in a living room full of people she wanted to impress, sip wine she didn't buy, and smile like she owned the place. And then I was going to take that smile off her face so completely she'd never recover from the shock. Not because of revenge, but because I finally understood the truth. They didn't just underestimate me, they never really saw me at all. The morning of the party, the house felt unnervingly quiet. Tyler left early to run errands, which really meant soothing whatever panic his mother had whipped herself into the night before. I didn't care. Let them spin. Let them sweat. I wasn't rushing anything. By late afternoon, the caterers arrived, my coworkers started trickling in, and the living room filled with voices that didn't carry judgment or entitlement. It felt good, almost grounding, until I saw her car pull up. She stepped out in a dress that screamed old money she didn't have, carrying that brittle smile she used to hide whatever poison she was planning. Tyler trailed behind her, looking like a man walking into a courtroom. I watched them both the way you watch strangers you've already studied too well. She tried to act unbothered. She complimented the decorations. She made fake nice comments about the food. She pretended this was her world, and everyone else was just visiting it. But I saw the way her eyes scanned each corner of the house, like she was checking inventory. I saw how she paused near the hallway, where her old measuring tape incident had happened. I saw how she straightened picture frames as if she were still the authority here. She wasn't nervous about the party. She was nervous about losing the house, about losing her history, her property, her second chance. And that was when it clicked, the real reason she hated me, not because of my personality, not because I wasn't family, not because of some traditional nonsense. It was so much darker, simpler, and colder than any of that. This house, my house, was the last thing she had left of the life she used to brag about. She'd lost everything else years ago. Her old business, her investments, the other house she'd ruined with debt. She'd spent decades telling people she was a real estate woman, someone who built a legacy. But she didn't have a legacy. She had one property that she destroyed. One property the bank took back. One property she couldn't afford or maintain. One property she believed she deserved simply because she once owned it. And when she learned Tyler was dating someone responsible, stable, with good credit and a steady job, she saw a lifeline, not a daughter-in-law, not a partner for her son, not a person, a lifeline. Someone she could manipulate into restoring her image. Someone she could quietly funnel a house back through. Someone she could erase once she got what she wanted. I was her ticket to getting her house back without leaving a paper trail. I was her way of undoing her past mistakes, polishing her reputation, and hiding the financial mess she'd made of her life. That's why she rearranged my kitchen. Why she spoke to me like I was temporary. Why she introduced me as the girl who lives here. Why she pushed boundaries like she was testing the fence of a property she believed was already hers. It wasn't personal. It was practical. It was cold. She wanted the house, and she thought she could break me down until I handed it to her. And Tyler, he went along with it because he had grown up cleaning up her chaos. He was used to bailing her out. He was used to being her backup plan, her pawn. He didn't marry me out of love, not real love. He married me because I made the perfect shield for her mistakes. When that realization sank in, really sank in, it chilled me in a way no betrayal ever had. This wasn't about a kitchen. This wasn't about respect. This wasn't even about me. This was about a woman so desperate to rewrite her failures that she was willing to weaponize her own son's marriage to get a house back she never deserved. But tonight, she was going to learn what loss really felt like. Because the moment I stepped onto the little step stool in the living room and tapped my glass for attention, her face tightened, like she already knew the truth was coming for her. And it was hard. Everyone quieted down when I tapped the glass. 30 people across my living room, friends, coworkers, neighbors turned toward me. The projector sat on the console table behind me, already connected, the USB drive inside. My heart beat slow and steady, like my body already knew this moment was overdue. Tyler stood near the hallway, arms crossed, suspicious but pretending not to be. His mother hovered a step behind him, wearing that stretched, uneasy smile tight enough to crack. I didn't look at either of them. I smiled at the room instead. "Thank you all for coming," I said. "I know it's unusual to throw a housewarming almost a year after moving in, but I realized something recently." A ripple of polite laughter moved through the room, except from the two people I wanted to see panic. "I realized I never properly celebrated buying this house," I continued. "I never acknowledged what a big deal it was, not to other people, and definitely not to myself." My mother-in-law shifted. I saw it from the corner of my eye. A small, nervous glance toward the projector like she sensed what was coming. "So before we eat," I said, lifting my glass, "I want to share something important, something I'm proud of." I clicked the remote. The lights dimmed, and the living room wall lit up with one massive, crystal-clear image, the deed to the house. Sole owner, MY name. The gasp from the crowd was real. Immediate, loud. But nothing, compared to the way my mother-in-law's face drained of color like someone had pulled the plug on her blood supply. Tyler blinked at the wall, stunned, his mouth falling open with this tiny, pathetic sound, half denial, half fear. He looked at me like I'd just detonated a bomb he thought he hid underneath my feet. But I wasn't done, not even close. I turned to the room and spoke louder, steadier. "I bought this house with my money, my credit, and my name. I pay the mortgage, I maintain it, I manage it. And until recently, I didn't know how many misunderstandings there were about that." The room hummed with tension. People looked from me to the screen, then to my mother-in-law, whose jaw had tightened into something almost rigid. "So tonight," I said, "I want to make sure there's no confusion, no question, no revisionist history." I raised my glass. "I live here, I own this home, and I'm done pretending otherwise." Some people clapped, some murmured. Some just stared, wide-eyed, because the tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. But I didn't look at them. I looked directly at her. For the first time since I'd known her, she couldn't fake anything. Not a smile, not control. Not dominance, nothing. Her entire face twisted into this expression I'd never seen, raw shock tangled with humiliation. Then she turned and walked out, quietly. Not a word, not a goodbye, not a bite of food, just gone. Tyler followed her outside, calling her name. He didn't even look back at me. I let him go, because I already knew we were done. And 2 weeks later, when I filed for divorce, the attorney confirmed exactly what I already understood. He had no claim to the house. None, not a dollar, not a square inch, not one piece of siding. I kept everything. He moved into his sister's apartment. She stopped showing up anywhere near my street. And I rebuilt my life in the house they tried so hard to take from me. Some nights, I sit in the kitchen, the same kitchen she tore apart, and I think about the moment she realized I had beaten her at her own game. The moment her face turned white. The moment she understood the house she'd tried to reclaim belonged to the one person she never respected. Me. And every time I think about it, I smile, because the truth is simple. You don't get to rewrite my life. You don't get to erase me. You don't get to take what I built, not anymore. And if she ever forgets, she's more than welcome to come over. I still have the projector.